Circe and Odysseus. Oh, sing of Circe, wily Odysseus, sacker of cities, hero of epic histories, twister of many truths, lost on the wide seas between the fallen towers of gold and Ilium and home in Ithaca. We will listen and we will believe your tales. Suntan, salt-sore, carried on the north wind, we made land on Aia's sandy shore, our hands calloused, our backs stiff, the black sails in tatters from the storm, the one surviving boat of 12 that set a course for home from blood-soaked Troy. Here we rested for 2 days and nights. The air was wholesome, the clear water from a rocky stream was cool and sweet, the sun warm and bright. How the birds sang, even after dark, when only the pale moon lit the woods above the beach. On the 3rd day I took my spear and my bow, leaving the sunlight to enter the woods, and climbing a rocky outcrop of stone I saw wisps of smoke. Cautious I approached. There was a fine house in the forest, its tiled roof shone in the evening sun. I returned to the ship, killing a stag as a meal for my men. The giant lowered his huge antlers to receive my spear's fatal thrust. While we feasted on rich red meat, I described the palace in the woods. We divided our party in 2, drawing lots to see who would approach the house and speak to its owner, seeking directions home. Eurylochus set out with 20 men. The shade was sweet with the scent of honeysuckle, the moss cool on their feet. A lioness strolled up to Eurylochus and butted its head into the warrior's thigh, a purr rumbling deep in the tawny fur of her throat. Wolves slunk out of the shade and dogged their steps. Delicate spiders' webs hung from the myrtle bushes. Thistledown floated in the warm air, carried on a slight breeze. A voice from the house reached the band of warriors, though each heard a different song. Each man was reminded of his home. So many miles away, so many years ago. Tears rolled down their cheeks. The men were drawn from the shelter of the wood towards the palace. There golden-eyed Circe sits, the sun's daughter, her shuttle flying as she sat at the loom. Perhaps they should have seen the design she was weaving. Wild boars rooting for acorns between the roots of a giant oak. But who looks at handicraft when a goddess is near? Only Eurylochus hung back, safe in the shadow. Circe spoke in a human voice, called each sailor by name, welcomed them to her island, invited them to eat and rest. She drew them into the dining room, offered them comfortable seats at her table. Sing of Circe, cunning Odysseus, sunlight shining from her eyes, silver snakes circling her slender arms, immortal but without power amongst the gods. She studied the craft of witches, gathered herbs in the light of the new moon, distilled their elixir in bubbling limbex, fashioned a wand from an evergreen ivy branch. She brought them cheese and barley and amber-coloured honey, and filled their cups with sweet, dark Bramnian wine. But alas, the wine was drugged, laced with a magical combination of powerful herbs. The sweet wine ran through their veins, eased their pains, clouded their thoughts. Circe tapped each man on his head with an ivy wand. How that patch of mud seemed to call them, How the acorns lying in the woods lured them away from the house. They tottered on slender feet, followed in the nymph's footsteps, rubbed their hairy flanks against the table legs in an ecstasy of pleasure. All this their captain saw. He ran to Odysseus and begged him to come, to see his men make pigs of themselves under the spell of the enchantress. He grabbed his sword and ran towards the heart of the enchantment's power. Deep in the forest, breathless, straining every sinew, Odysseus found himself frozen in motion. A stranger in the woods stood before him. "Hold, Odysseus," Hermes said. "When she offers you wine, crush this white blossom moly in your cup, a black-rooted herb that will shield you from her spell." He found her at her loom, singing a song of such beauty that even the boars in the yard lifted their snouts from the warm mud, to gaze in wonder at the nymph. She turned her head towards him. Sunlight streamed from her golden eyes. Softly she spoke, a goddess with a human voice. She was all beauty, all grace. I took the dark wine she gave me without a thought. Only a sudden aroma of roasting pork brought me to my senses, as she bent to scratch the ear of one of her contented pigs. He followed her like a faithful hound. I crushed the acrid juice into my cup and swallowed the wine in one great gulp. He had the glamour of the gods about him. His golden skin glowed, the heavy lines on his face quite gone. It was almost a shame to trick him so. One tap of my wand, then nothing. He drew his bronze sword, his fierce eyes flashed. Inside I laughed at his impatience, his impotence before a goddess. Still I knelt and clung to his knees. She clung to my knees, wept beneath the sharp blade of my sword. The blood in her veins was warm from the sun. Her shining hair smelt of sunburnt rosemary, of the late summer's lavender and the drowsy honeysuckle. This close I could smell the smoke on his clothes, hear the muffled laughter in the belly of the wooden horse, see the blood trickle under the temple door, the crash of falling towers. Yet still, I freed his men from enchantment, and I took his rough hand and led him to my bed. Sing of Penelope, faithless Odysseus, weaving your father's shroud and unpicking the weave every night to prolong a marriage to a phantom, one who takes 10 years to hurry home from a war, while each day her suitors wallow in a hall, roll on the wine-stained rushes, squabble and sun themselves at her expense. For a year I slept in her bed, fed at her table, listened as she sang. Then as summer faded into autumn, her power seemed to fade as the sun grew more distant. I saw the swallows leave their nest, and then I thought of wise Penelope waiting at home, of Ithaca and the sun at home in the hall, a fatherless child. I wake to find that my bed is empty. Odysseus has gone in the night. Mortals always go like clouds, they pass over the island, barely casting a shadow, then hurrying on. This is my first winter. The leaves begin to fall, the waters freeze. I can hear the harpies cry, and the distant bellow of a dark soul, lost in the labyrinth beneath Knossos. Sing of Argus, homesick Odysseus. He sleeps on a dunghill outside your hall. Inside Penelope lies alone, on a bed made from a living tree. How that tree has grown in 20 years, and on her loom your patient queen finds an unpickable image, woven by another hand, a golden nymph seated on a throne, surrounded by leopards, staring straight at her with golden eyes. And there is Odysseus, weaving his way home across the wine-dark sea.